Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Traversing Entrepreneurship podcast, a show for business owners who set out to do something different and did not stop there. This is Derek DeLomo coming to you from Traverse City, Michigan, the city that inspired the name of this show. With over 18 years of experience in the financial industry, I've heard my fair share of success as well as horror stories in business. On this podcast, I enjoy sitting down with a variety of entrepreneurs to talk about what it takes to build a successful business, including all the ups and downs that come along with doing something different and paving your own way in life. In today's episode, I'll be interviewing Rob Lee, co-founder and CEO of Swiss Passport and Visa Services, a company that helps travelers expedite passports and obtain visas. Join us today as we discuss how Rob and his wife were unlikely entrepreneurs who started a business from scratch. Welcome to the show, Rob, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Derek. Great to be here.
So, Rob, can you give both myself and our listeners a little bit of, your history? How in the world, how did Swift Passport and Visa Services get started, and what the heck led you to do that?
Yeah, it's a kind of an unlikely story of two unlikely entrepreneurs. My wife and I, we met in Montana. We both worked for the U.S. Forest Service. I had a forestry degree. I was living the life doing that. And my wife, Lori, had a degree in wildlife biology. And she was working for the U.S. Forest Service, and I was too. And through a series of life choices, we lived in Central America for a while, and we ran into situations where we used a service quite like ours at the time, and we didn't know it, and we saw the need for it, although had never thought of any intention of starting a business doing this. We found ourselves in Chicago unexpectedly, and this kind of quite literally fell into our lap. We met a guy that helped us get started, and having nothing to lose, 17 years later, we're still in business.
It's kind of crazy, so like, who are you working with now? Like, how does a business like this sustain itself? It's like, I've got, a sister who's an expat, and she goes through and, obtains she lives in Spain, so they obtain visas to come here every summer. She's always worried about, her husband getting pulled aside because he's the only one that doesn't have an American passport. Her and the kids, have dual citizenship. So how does a business like this sustain itself?
Yeah, that's a great question. We initially thrived on paid ads, and we kind of knew, with Google and Yahoo at the time when we first started, but
now you're dating yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Bing ads and Yahoo ads. Anyway, we thrived off of pay-per-click ads, and we knew throughout the time that we relied on that wasn't going to be sustainable for very long. And somewhere probably around a little over 10 years ago, we realized that we really needed to focus on continued business revenue that was coming in. So we really shifted focus, and like right around, I think it was 2014, we really started going after businesses inside the U.S. that travel internationally, and really started working to procure business with these companies. And that's what's been sustaining us, is continued partnerships with some Fortune 100, but Fortune 500, and just even smaller businesses that have travelers that go to places like China, India, Vietnam on a regular basis. And that's been what's sustained us. The pay-per-click thing kind of naturally went away, and thankfully we had prepared for it. And here we find ourselves, that's the main focus of our business now. Although we do service individual travelers going on vacation and families going, like summer break or study abroad, our primary focus is on businesses that travel internationally.
And are there certain sectors that you guys operate in mainly, or is it like, it's tech, it's manufacturing, it's finance, it's kind of all over the map?
Great question. We initially started, we had a family member in the aviation business, And so a lot of our first business clients were in that space. And now two of our major accounts are cargo airlines. So we're still in the airline space, but they take up a big chunk of our business. There's a couple of law firms that we do business with, and then the others, yeah, are typically manufacturing. All aspects of manufacturing. Some in the pharmaceutical industry, others in home goods, things like that. But primarily, I would say the aviation, legal, and manufacturing industries.
Yeah, I mean, manufacturing makes sense,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we import things every day from Vietnam, from China, from Indonesia, from Taiwan, etc. So I would
exactly.
assume that there's, people traveling all the time. So when you say aviation industry, is that like pilots and staff, or is it like mechanics and sale? I guess
Yeah,
I wasn't aware that anybody, like if they were a pilot or, a flight attendant, anything like that, they needed a visa.
yeah. It is mainly pilots and crew member. We process a few hundred a month, China and India visas specifically, every month for these customers. It's their pilots, and then since they're in the cargo space, they don't necessarily have like flight attendants and things like that. But we do also cater to some of their support staff, like their mechanics and things like that, their ground support staff, but primarily the pilots and the support staff surrounding that.
Okay. So if we think back to, let's see, you said 17 years ago you started this.
Yeah, 2008.
So 2008. Okay. Interesting time to start, a business.
Yeah.
And you were also working for the federal government at the time. So how does one go from, all right, federal government to starting a business with no business experience? Who did you lean on, I guess, to help you kind of, and what did you learn along the way?
Yeah. Great question again. We worked for the federal government in a capacity that has nothing to do with this. I was a wildland firefighter, so I fought forest fires. And my wife at the time, she was a fire biologist, so she researched the effects of fire. So it's kind of interesting.
So you came in while it was going on. She came in afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. And we both found ourselves through natural occurrence of events without a job. And we met this guy that we became friends with, and he helped us quite a bit get started. He had uh, in the in our in the parlance of our industry terms, he had passport slots with the Chicago Passport Agency. So he was able to submit a bunch of applications for passports, U.S. passports, and he helped us by selling these slots. And he gave us the in to this aspect of the business. And then both my father and my wife and my father-in-law were both entrepreneurs, and without their support and guidance, I don't think we would have gotten too far off the ground. We did it as a, well, we don't have anything to lose, so let's try it out. And while we didn't have the intention of growing big at the time, I guess we did, and it just kept, like, even in 2008, like starting a business, it was like, oh, everything else is crashing, but we didn't have anything to lose, so it
Oh,
just
we're
kept.
taking off. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like we weren't like, oh well, we weren't inhibited by, well, we got to focus on our real job and make sure that we keep that. So we didn't have
Right.
this thing to sacrifice, so to speak. It was almost out of a necessity that we started it. So
So, you've mentioned that you didn't have any business experience, and you relied on, father-in-law, somebody, other people to kind of help things, I guess. What were your biggest takeaways looking back to that starting point of, like, because that, everybody always says it takes a certain kind of person to be able to, handle and run a business, to be an entrepreneur, right?
mhm.
So, you coming from, I don't know if you were a hot shotting or what, but
Yeah.
coming from hot shotting to hot shotting business,
Yeah.
it's like, what would you say were your, two biggest lessons learned, or, what was the biggest lesson you learned while starting it and then growing it?
Great, great point again. Looking back, I would say the biggest learning lesson was we were warned this, but like hard work was what gave us the. Let me take that back. Hard work was what we had to offer to the business. So we were hard workers. Like I was raised learning that if you work hard, you can do anything in life. And I think starting a business that applies. However, the biggest learning curve was letting go of the things that the hard work that we couldn't necessarily do or that we weren't good at per se, and the
Which is
constant.
probably one of the hardest things to figure out is what aren't you good at?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, I can continue to do this, and I think the realization of like, well, you got to hire people that are good at that, like a bookkeeper or like the marketing was a huge thing. It's like, oh, well, I can do this pay per click thing, but then like all of a sudden, like spending $20,000 a month easily on something, and you're like, oh, am I making money back on this? And so handing over the reins to more experienced people in those kind of subcategories that you can handle as you start up, but like you definitely need to let go of or hire or outsource the help
Yeah.
for.
So did you have like a metric that you came up with to be like, hey, now it's time to hire or outsource this
Uh,
box? Or I guess, how did you come to that decision?
the with the pay per click, I think there was 1 month where I was so busy doing other things, working hard, that I wasn't paying attention to what we were spending, and the crazy thing was we were getting business, so it was like, oh, we're doing great, but it was like we were spending all this money on Google, and I was like, oh man, like this is like we had a good month and then we had a bad month, which is obviously natural ebb and flow of business, but the bad month it was like, wow, we outspend our income by like I think it was like $30,000 in 1 month, and like we got like it was like like a hit to the gut, like, oh, we got to find someone, and we quickly found someone. It was a lady that we were introduced to, and she was an expert at it. And um, we quickly realized that we should have done it probably months before. But she was kind of the gateway into like, oh yeah, there's people that can do this. You don't pay them. I mean, we pay them a fair wage, but or fair amount of money, but it's worth their weight in gold.
Yeah. To basically to manage the pay per click side, or, what are we
Yeah,
talking about?
that was the pay per click side, and the accounting side. That's probably been the one thing that if there was one thing that I would recommend is having your books in order right off the get go. It's like we didn't get too far in, but we were far enough in where it was like, oh well, we weren't making enough money to pay ourselves a wage, but we were taking distributions, and it was like finding the balance. Needed to have someone help us find the balance between, well, what's livable wage? We both were in the business, and so I think the marketing and the accounting were the two first major milestones of offloading work that we weren't best suited to be doing.
Yeah, as somebody who's in, the accounting and finance world, it's amazing how little people understand about their books, but how much of a valuable tool that it can be to help you make a decision.
Absolutely.
It's like, as long as you have clean data, which
Hmm.
sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but as long as you have clean data coming in there, I mean, you can pretty much, you can make big forecasts, you can,
Hmm.
get really granular on things, but it's amazing how little people want to spend on even just a bookkeeping software to do it themselves.
It's amazing, and it's so when you don't have to concern yourself. Well, you have to be concerned with it, but when you don't have to worry about doing it yourself, reconciling bank accounts, like we had
Yeah.
so many we have so many transactions. it's like that was kind of like the red flag. It was like, okay, I can't even reconcile the bank account because there's so many transactions. And yeah, the value of the little overhead expense it is to manage that is unbelievable.
Yep, because so I just finished doing a bunch of tax returns, obviously for tax season, and one of the businesses that I did, they basically emailed me a list of expenses, just with dollar amounts, dates, and et cetera. I'm like, what are we doing here? what are we doing here? I'm like, this does no good to anybody. One, I can't sort it. I mean, I can and I did, but it's just like you are required as a certain type of filer to keep monthly books and records.
Right.
So,
And if they're inaccurate, whew, there's
yep,
a
the IRS is the most powerful enforcement agency in the world, and they shoot first and ask questions later.
we did have the luxury of going through an audit early on in our business, so that
So,
really
what was your experience there? I mean, so how did they what were they auditing you for, and then how did that process go down for you?
yeah, it was quite a trying venture of what we were doing. So one of the things that we do is when we take payment for our service, we also take payment for whatever the government entity that we're working with on your behalf. So let's say it's a US passport, we're taking payment from you in most cases for the US passport fee. It just keeps the transaction easier, and it's one less thing that the applicant has to worry about doing, is making a separate payment for the government fee, or like Chinese visa. It makes more sense for us to pay in bulk when we pick up 50 visas at once, as opposed to having a bunch of people send in money orders to us. So early on, we built it into our pricing. So it's like you're paying our fee, but on top of that, you're paying the government fee. And back when we got audited, one of our biggest services was getting business visas to Brazil. And Brazil required specifically a single U.S. post office money order for every single application. So if we submitted 50 applications, we had to have 50 individual U.S. post office money orders. And
Whoa.
the only way to pay the post, the only way to pay the post office for a money order is either cash or debit card. And somehow along the way, we got flagged for all these money order purchases, and that was the thing that set off the audit. And so we had to go through, and we kept receipts. We kept pretty detailed receipts, but we didn't have like a software that could really. Back then, there wasn't really a good receipt keeping software. Like there was a
Yeah.
few kind of new up and coming things. There's one in particular called Shoeboxed.
Yep.
Shoebox, yeah. And we actually got featured in a Cranes Business Chicago article because of we were like one of their first big use cases. And without that, I think we would have really failed on the audit. When it came down to it, the audit came out free and clear. I think we got taxed on something like they were going to get their money regardless, but it was like on $600 of income that we couldn't prove. So all in all, the new model of keeping track of receipts through scans paid off. They didn't at the time. Another interesting story is they didn't like that. They wanted all the receipts organized in a file because they weren't used to the scanned receipts and things like that. So it was a trying. I think it lasted like 3 weeks, but we got through it pretty much unscathed.
Yeah, I remember using Shoeboxed when it first came out. I mean, I would have been a small user at the time, but I mean, it was a heck of a lot easier just being like, oh, okay, took so and so to lunch,
Yeah,
boom. And then, once a month kind of go in there and make sure that everything was correct. But now I didn't have this, you know, massive folder envelope. I mean, I did as a backup, but, after a year, I think I got rid of it. And
yeah,
it's just like, it was a heck of a lot easier just to scan, snap, you know, it read the business. So it somehow sorted, you had to go and double check it every now and again. But it's like, oh, it was at, what restaurant do you have in Chicago? McDonald's, right? That's everywhere. So it's like, oh, it's McDonald's. That's, meals and entertainment. And here was the total dollar amount, you know, pretty
Yeah,
slick system.
yeah, it was. And the funny thing was because it was so new to the IRS, uh, the auditor made us print out every single receipt. So I think we went through like 5 reams of paper printing out every single receipt. And we came in with this huge, like, Home Depot plastic bin full of these receipts. Took 2 of us to carry all the receipts in. And that's what they wanted, and that's what they got. I don't know how much she liked that, but it was like huge stacks in her office of here's all the receipts. Good luck.
Yeah. And it's funny now, most everything has to be done digitally.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So how quickly the turns have tabled, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, in the last, kind of 17 years, and I'll preface this with, everybody defines success differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the last 17 years, I'm sure you've had some success and I'm sure you've had some struggles.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say has been your biggest success over the last 17 years? And how would you, and why?
I kind of back to what we started out talking about is I would say the biggest success would be the working hard or working smarter theory. I would say the biggest success was leaning into the working smarter idea. And obviously that's an ongoing, ever evolving kind of life lesson.
Always.
Right. Yeah. And, but I think for so long, I would say the first half of the business, it was like everything was on our shoulders. Everything was on our shoulders, which it is, I guess, inherently as a business owner, it's like, this is your risk. This is your responsibility. But the biggest lesson was, and continues to be, just like letting that kind of trickle off. And I guess a good way of saying it would be buying back our own time.
Yeah.
To create balance in the workplace, but also at home. We were husband and wife working together 24 hours a day, living together, and like we were able to find our balance between each other, what one was good at and the other wasn't, etc. But like then finding a balance of like, oh, okay, we can separate work, and now we're living kind of like our home life. And granted, that's never fully separated, but as far as successes, obviously there's financial success too, but I would say that's probably the top success for us. Or me.
So how does that conversation go at home when you decide, when you're basically deciding who's good at what or who's not good at something else?
Yeah.
Of course you got to tread lightly with that one, but how does that conversation go with your wife being like, oh, I'm better at this than you? Or do you always start with, you're better at me than this? You're better at this than me.
Yeah, I think early on there was definitely some struggle, like especially with the visioning of the trajectory of the business. Like we both wanted to have a voice. Well, we both want to have a voice, or any partnership wants to have a voice. But I think we were fortunate enough that like Lori is super organized and super good at like checklists and like making sure, like filing to-dos into different categories and buckets, and like this can be moved to next week or next month. And I like she took off with that, and like kind of helped organize the entire business that way. I think other than that though, I think we had the good fortune of, we have a balanced skill set, and that doesn't necessarily happen with every partnership that you're in, but like we were able to hone in on what that balance was. There's some definitely awkward or tense moments throughout the years trying to figure that out. But I think we naturally kind of came to the conclusions of who was good at this and who was good at that. I think the biggest the biggest friction point was the old saying, or the old way of thinking, working on the business as opposed to for the business. And we were, you're continually trying to work on the business and not for the business. And in the nature of the things that I was doing, it appeared that I was working on the business more than for the business, whereas Lori was really ingrained in the day to day in a lot of ways that I wasn't. But I think we finally came to a natural balance there as well. So I think that was probably the biggest friction point throughout the whole process.
So I guess how do you find that, call it work-life balance or even work-work balance? Just, I mean, every entrepreneur is, it's work travels with you wherever you go, even if you're on, vacation.
Vacation.
Right, vacation. I need a vacation from the vacation because
Yeah.
something, everything just kind of piles up, and then you're like, oh, I've got all this stuff to do. Anyway,
Mhm.
but how do you, what's helped you guys kind of find that kind of balance of, both working on or in or not at all?
Mm. Yeah. I think being honest with ourselves, starting out, even into I would say, let's just call it the first half of the existence of the business, like we'd be at home and something would come up, or be on the weekend, and like one of us would have a laundry list of things to do before Monday. And it was like, well, we found ourselves working together on the weekend to, whether it was catching up on, bookkeeping stuff, or like, yeah, we got to get all this stuff together for taxes, like it was like pouring in support for each other there. But I think the defining moment was really having like an honest conversation about, hey, we need to be able to say, nope, not talking about this right now, in a gentle and kind
Yeah,
way, but like, can we hold off on that? I need to disconnect for the day or the weekend. And it was maybe a little rough at first, but I think once you start doing that, it's like, yeah, yeah, take that day off, like,
yeah,
and there was, fortunately for us, there was never any like competition, like, well, you had this much time off or you did this. Like we were able to be honest and open enough with each other to balance that. And I think also one added thing to that is, as a early entrepreneur or as a first time business owner, you, at least in my experience, personal pursuits get kind of put off to the side or like
hmm,
eliminated in many cases. And Lori started having some pretty significant personal pursuits that, like, as a life partner or husband, you want to be able to support that. And I think that was also another turning point that kind of happened around 2016, where she had this personal path of growth, which is now turned into a completely separate business, which is amazing. But like having personal pursuits, it's like, oh yeah, I support you doing this outside of work, and that kept buying back more time to free up more space to allow these personal pursuits, and that kind of really even the playing field, I would say. I mean, that's a loose term, but like I guess that's a good way of saying it. Like it's like, I want to spend some time on this, and it's like, okay, yeah, you should spend some time on this, and then we
so
realized
what is the separate, what is the, what's turned into a second business now, I guess, with from your wife's personal pursuits?
yeah, completely separate of travel, uh, completely opposite, but she in 2016 donated a kidney,
Oh,
and yeah, and that turned into a personal passion where in her free time she was volunteering. She started a non-for-profit with her father, and as that grew and as she was able to pursue it further, it turned into a business where her and her partner, they contract with hospitals to help their patients that need life-saving kidney transplants find living donors. And it's a whole program designed around advocating for people that need uh, organ transplants, and then also conversely supporting the people that are donating their organs to these patients. And it's really taken off. This has been within the last couple of years, and so much so that earlier this year in February, she's still involved, but she's really taken a full step back and been able to focus almost fully on that business.
So would it be correct in calling it like a database and support service, or I guess?
Yeah, they have a process of leveraging the people's social networks outside, not just Facebook, but just leveraging their network to tell a story. And so there's that aspect. And now they're working in a whole new proprietary technology to help support that. So that's where like this kind of launching pad where they're at right now is exciting to see, like this technology that's, like you said, database, like is a big part of what they're doing now.
Well, like you said, Laura is very organized, and
Yeah.
I mean, to do that, you have to be very organized and be able to kind of put things in the right spots to be like, okay, we need to look at this data set or this social network or this whatever data point to be able to then turn that into actionable actions, I guess, action, right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely 100% on point.
So are visas and passports like the only thing you guys are what you're still doing with Swift, or have you kind of expanded further?
Funny you say that. I am in the midst of working. I'm at the proverbial 1 yard line with a software application development for our business. It's been something that I've been pursuing since somewhere around 2019. Then the pandemic obviously had a major impact in the business. But the landscape of passports and visas has always been changing. There's so much out of our control with government relations, government requirements, diplomatic relations. We're seeing it right now with the various actions with tariffs and that, like how that's shifting demand and the need for different services. The other thing that really right around the beginning of the pandemic started trending was a lot of countries that required what we'll call traditional visas, where we would physically submit your passport to an embassy or a consulate, and they would put a sticker on one of the pages in your passport, kind of like you were talking about with your sister and her family. I believe it was your sister, you said. And
Yes, correct.
And that's shifted to what e-visas or electronic visas. There's only a few countries left that have the traditional visa, China being one of the biggest ones, and China is probably our biggest area of focus when it comes to visas. So we've had to evolve and be able to accommodate that. Otherwise, we'll be left in the dust of like the changing environment that we have no control over. It's just kind of like the natural progression. When we first started, that would have been like that would have just been like, what?
This has to have a sticker on the actual
Yeah,
physical
yeah,
page.
yeah,
We don't need a digital service for this.
yeah, exactly. And so what we're creating is a robust, you could call it a traveler profile and portal. So we'll be able to securely store all of your valid travel documents and effectively help you plan out, especially like with executives or some of these crew members that we're talking about, plan out like months, if not a year in advance of like, okay, you have a document expiring here. You're going to need to apply now for this visa, or, oh, hey, your passport's expiring on this date and you're saying that you need to go to China. Well, China requires that you have 6 months validity on your passport. So you should apply here to renew your passport before you have to go to China. So it's we're stepping into the AI world and making this like a full on usable application for not only our customers, but potentially using the service outside of even needing our traditional services.
Hmm. And I would assume that makes things go a little faster, or is it just? It,
Yeah. So one of the kind of core principles of the application is, especially like with these crew member, like they'll apply for a Chinese visa, then they'll apply for an India visa, and so much of the information is all the same, and they have to enter it again. So, oh, we applied for a China visa, but now you got to go fill out this India visa application, and it asks so much of the same information. So it's like, well, how can we make it easier for these applicants to not have to recomplete all this information, and then like the storage of documents, like, well, I need a copy of my China visa, but I don't have my passport. Do you have that so that I can use that? And it's like, well, we do have that, but I don't know how we're going to find that. So it's like creating like a storage solution for all your valid travel documents, and then also storing pertinent information that you can reuse as you apply for applications. So it's kind of hitting a bunch of different marks that in turn make the process easier, not only for us, but the most importantly, the applicants.
yeah, yeah, and it seems you're streamlining the process per se, and taking out the redundancies. It sounds like,
That's exactly it.
and also putting it in a format that is, what's the word I'm looking for, acceptable by the various government agencies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's yes, and then the biggest aspect of that is the security of it all. So it's like, people want scans of their passport to have on file, and then like, how do you transport this scan? Instead of sending encrypted email, now we'll have a secure location where you can just, oh, I need a scan of my passport. I can pull it down from Swift's site, and now I have that easily. I just log in, and there it is. So it's providing ease of access, and then on our end, it's like freeing up customer support time where like, hey, can you get me a scan of this visa that you got me a year and a half ago? And it's like, oh, we gotta dig through all the files, like re-encrypt it, like the whole like there's a whole process to that. So it's
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like a paperwork nightmare.
yeah. And it's eliminating, like you said, paperwork. Like, we're eliminating as much paper. There's still some paperwork for some things, but it's quite literally digitizing everything.
So here's a random question for you. I mean, the call it wire transfers internationally are done through the Swift system, right?
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
is is does your name either get confused, or is there an overlap with that? I mean, is it, or was it done by design?
No, that's interesting. You say that because when we first did it, and we applied for a trademark, one of the kind of red flags that came up by the patent and trademark office was like, well, Swift banking, and it's like we had to prove that we weren't doing banking transactions. So it's funny you say that, but we don't get caught up in that. But the one thing that people do call us, they hear the name, it's Swift, as in, like you said, Swift, like the ACH transfer, but they think we're saying Swiss passport. And so they're like, can you get us a Swiss passport? And we're like, no, we're Swift passport services. Like, it's kind of a funny play on the word, but no, we haven't run into any issues though with the name Swift, thankfully.
Either that or trucking, because there's Swift
Oh yeah.
trucking as well.
Yeah, that's a
It's
big
like
that's a big one.
we just drove from Michigan to Florida and back, and it was like every third truck you see
It was
is
a Swift
Swift.
truck. Yeah. Little, or like my nephews asked, "Is this your trucking company?" It's like, man, I wish I was full of passports. Like,
Yeah. Well, now you don't have to do it on
now we
trucking
don't.
anymore.
Yeah,
It's all,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's becoming digitized. So when you say you're on the one yard line, what hurdles do you still have to cross to kind of make that a viable business moving forward?
Yeah, so we're within a few weeks of a minimum viable product, MVP, so to speak, and our biggest hurdle right now is going through a security compliance audit so that the customers that we know want to use it, this will meet their internal company IT security standards. So that's going on this week and then leading up to this week. Once we have that, I think that's probably the biggest hurdle, and then the next would just be having a successful trial launch of the entire thing. So that's a little nerve wracking.
Daunting.
Yeah, daunting is the right word. Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah, so we're hoping by the end of May to have the first iteration of the software available to beta test.
Oh wow! So like a week and a half away, basically.
Yeah, it's coming in hot.
No kidding. It's kind of bringing you back to your fire jumping days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So, like us, normal people on the outside, when we think about technology or security protocols, the ones that are mentioned in, the normal course of business are HIPAA or, whatever else. How does these companies' internal security protocols stack up to something like HIPAA? Is it similar? Is it way more, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. To get HIPAA compliance, we wouldn't be too far off if we wanted HIPAA compliance. So all of this is based around personal identifiable information.
Yep.
So making sure that we have all the, obviously, technology aspects under control, but also the internal office situation. Like what's our network, our internal network, people coming in the office, who are all our vendors. So it's really ratcheting down, creating and rebuilding policies around personal data. And we've always taken that extremely seriously. And thankfully, like going through, I mean, the list of things is like almost like mind boggling how much you have to go through. But as we went through it, we're fortunate to realize like, okay, well, we already have this, we have to tweak this or that. And all of it, when it's said and done, is what we want as a business to be able to say, hey, we got your data covered. We're completely compliant in this. I mean, it's something that you would want, and sure, there's hoops to jump through to get it. But it's what you want to be able to deliver to anyone that we work with.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, if you were really keen on the marketing side, so personally identifying information is PII, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you would have launched it March 14th on Pi Day.
Yeah, that would have been a good one. That would have been awesome.
That would have been a really clever,
that would have been
really
awesome.
Clever piece, like Pi Day, PII, all that stuff tied in together.
I'll have to remember that for next March.
Yep, next March you're going to have another launch party. A push for it on Pi Day. To protect your personal identifying information. PII on Pi Day. Look at me. I should trademark that.
I know. Can we hire you? No.
There's your $1 million idea.
Yeah.
So Rob, we usually start to wind things down and kind of give, our guests, some time to have the floor and kind of speak directly to the listeners. So usually they'll, whether it's offer advice, discuss something that you're passionate about, expand on personal experience, kind of whatever comes to mind, advice for entrepreneur, there's all sorts of things you can do. But I guess this is time for you to have the floor and say, whether it's promote Swift, talk about kind of the business ownership journey, whatever you're passionate about today is probably something to go for. So I think, it's your time to have the floor and have a little bit extra of what, Rob Lee and Swift Passport and Visa Services has to offer.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Obviously, the biggest thing that I would like to throw out there is we were experts in travel document procurement. we specialize in China visas. So like I would say that it's fair to say that we are the group of people that we have working for us are probably some of the most knowledgeable people with China visas. As we process quite literally thousands and thousands of them every year. And with this new software application, we're really looking to get expand outside of just the traditional passport and visa role and get into more of the software solutions. And we look forward to being able to bring this technology to the masses, so to speak, and find a new niche where there's a lot of gaps in travel planning, visa regulation, compliance, and then finding our little niche in that kind of crowded marketplace where like there's a lot of business travel software out there, and we're hoping to find a nice niche in that space to fill the big gaps that are between the big software companies like Concur or Amex Business Travel. Like they offer a lot of beautiful things. However, the visa and passport compliance is kind of like a no man's land that nobody really wants to touch on it. But we're the experts coming into an area of travel that needs an expert to guide the way.
To navigate it. Because I mean,
Yeah,
there's like, you're dealing in an area that I don't think anybody really understands because, you're dealing with various governments who all have their own, stake in the ground that says this is the way that it has to be done here, which is completely opposite than the one over here, which is completely opposite of the one over here. And they don't talk to each other.
yeah, they do not talk to each other at all, and then it's ever changing. Like it could be one day it's this way, and then they say, nope, just kidding, it's this way, and or there's a new requirement or a new restriction, and we love to be able to say that we'll provide you with the most up to date information when it comes to that.
Yeah. And then I would assume with the software solution that it is probably easier to update to the any new regulation or any new document style or type or security, that it's a lot easier to do it through that than it is a call it a hard copy old school
Yep.
solution.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. It'll make things easier. We're building it for ourselves as well, which is not to be left alone. We're doing this for our internal selves as well, because right now, until this software goes live, there's still like a very manual process of like someone's researching this and then re-entering this, and we hope that everything works the way that we're building it to have a lot of automation in that and take out some of the human manual labor of it all. So
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, humans make mistakes.
yeah, exactly.
So did you write the code for this, or
No, I'm the visionary. I'm the
okay?
dreamer. One funny thing is I have had this dream since 2018, and we started working on it in 2019. We got as far as coming up with some mock designs of what things would look like, and we tried to start going using the lull in business during the pandemic to build it. However, it was challenging because we didn't have business to support it, so getting loans and things to build it was kind of out of the question at that time. And we started with new developer, new user experience developers, and I didn't tell them much about what I had done before besides the concepts and the ideas and what we wanted. And we looked back at we got a mock-up of what this application was going to look like to the user, and it was uncanny how, based on like me regurgitating all the stuff that I've been dreaming and working on, the mock-up was almost identical to the mock-up that we had done before. So I was like, okay, that's a good sign. Like I'm communicating the same thing and same things being projected back to me as I wanted. It was like, oh my god, this is almost identical. It's like I shared a PDF of what the mock-up was in 2019.
Right. It's got to feel good though, that like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah. It was a nice
everything
little
that you
nudge.
said without, sharing that piece is what came back to you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. That
you
was kind
knew
of a
that
big
your
one.
vision
All right, we did it.
was able to be followed.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So how can, our listeners find out more about Swift passport and visa services? How do they get in contact with you? How do they, how do they start to utilize your services?
Great, great question. A lot of our business comes from people. It's word of mouth, and our website's swiftpassportservices.com or even just swiftpassport.com. You can find a whole bunch of information there. But what happens is people don't necessarily need us right away, but then when they do need us, they need us, or they
Yeah.
hear of someone that needs our service. So there's a lot of great word of mouth uh, 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 marketing that way. We also have a quite popular blog. It's more of a news site than a blog, but we put out 4 to 5 new pieces every month with fun travel stuff, but also pertinent travel information. If you subscribe to the blog, you get updates on when there's new information coming out. Like right now, there's a lot of changes happening, and if you're a traveler needing to stay on top of what's happening and don't necessarily have a pulse on that, we can definitely provide you with an accurate and up to date pulse on all the different goings on with
And then
international.
tomorrow it'll be different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You'll read it today, and then next week we'll say, "Wait, they changed that."
Just kidding. Just kidding. Here
That's
you
the
go.
story
Here's
of
the
our
new
life.
one.
Yeah, that's the story of our life.
Oh, isn't that the truth? The only thing I will ever guarantee is that things will change. And,
That's
and it's
that's
constant.
yeah, it's constant, and it's at times, if I can say one thing as a business owner, if you said if there's any advice or anything, I think becoming friends with change and the unknown, like we're totally stepping into the unknown with this new software piece, and then also the current international landscape. I would just recommend just really embracing change and the unknown as a business owner, especially as a new business owner. It's just like things are going to change all the time, and if you're resistant to it, it's just going to be more painful.
Yeah, I think how I would phrase that is being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Totally.
It's like you have to be comfortable when things get uncomfortable because and it will happen quickly and it could happen for a long time, but you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And you're doing all the right things. You're already uncomfortable right now because you've got what, January, February, March, 9 more days until the soft launch.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's yeah, that unknown. That's where all the magic happens, and it's the scariest part of it all, I guess. But yeah,
Absolutely.
being comfortable with the uncomfortable is definitely that's sage advice, if I were to say
It's,
so.
it's, it's one of those that kind of came by a whim. And it was like, I had a client who was like, I'm really uncomfortable with this. I was like, well, you just got to be comfortable with it. And so that's where it came from. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, I was like, wow, that's a pretty good saying.
Yeah, ironically, I learned that I'm also a yoga teacher. I'm passionate about yoga, and one of the things that yoga teaches you outside of moving your body is being completely comfortable in uncomfortable positions, and
Yeah,
it quite literally translated to business. And it was like, oh, I'm doing this not just for myself, but also for the business. It's a pretty cool aha moment.
yep. I personally despise yoga because
Yeah, there's
I
that.
can't be comfortable in those uncomfortable positions. You know, it's like, mentally or business wise, I can be comfortable being uncomfortable. Physically speaking, I'm like, That just
Nope.
doesn't feel good. And I'm not going to hold that for the next, 2 minutes because I should. Like,
Yeah.
nope, I'm an adult now. I'm moving on that. I don't need to do that.
Yeah, I think that's the vast majority of the world population. I still fall into that quite often.
I will say, I don't know, probably 10 years ago now, I did get into some yoga stuff as trying to get more flexible and, becoming comfortable, being uncomfortable, getting older. Right.
Right.
And it was like, you're still going to the gym, you're still doing, weightlifting or resistance exercises, but the sorest I would ever get was after doing like an hour-long yoga class. And it's like, you didn't lift any weight besides your body.
Yeah.
And, but you're like, man, all I was doing was this, and my hamstrings the next day are on fire, or my quads, or my, whatever it was.
Your
And
core
you're
or
just like,
whatever. Yeah.
how in the world does that, how
Yeah.
does that do that? But
Yeah.
I was always amazed at how sore
Yes.
I would be after,
Oh, it's so
even
amazing.
relaxation yoga. You're like,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. Right. That's kind of like the myth of it all. It's like, you do yoga. It's easy. It's like,
nope,
I don't know about that.
can't attest. It is not easy, and it is the most sore you will ever be in your life,
Right.
even with a relaxation class.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. Well, as you know, my name is Derek DeLomo. I am the owner of both Tremonti Financial Consultants and Tremonti Tax Solutions, together referred to as Tremonti. See, you can see it on my shirt there. Tremonti bridges the gap between financial advisors and accountants by serving as CFO to our clients. We specifically love to work with business owners to develop a proactive tax strategy that maximizes after-tax profits. It's our job to help you earn more, be more efficient, grow faster, and pay as little in taxes as legally possible. If this idea piques your interest, please go to TremontiTax.com and click on the Schedule Now button to book a 15-minute chat with me. Whether we end up working together or not, I'd love to hear from you. With all that said, Rob, it was really good talking to you today. Thanks for sharing all of your insight.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Derek. It was great to talk with you as well.
For those of you listening, if you enjoyed today's episodes and had a few helpful takeaway, we would love for you to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and share this episode with other business-minded friends. This has been another episode of the Traversing Entrepreneurship podcast. We had fun today and hope you did too. Thanks again, Rob, for being here, and thank you for tuning in and listening. Peace.
Thank you.
This podcast is presented by Tremonti Financial Consultants, LLC. The firm is registered as an investment advisor and only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability. The information presented is believed to be current. It should not be viewed as personalized investment advice. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the presenter on the date of the podcast and are subject to change. You should consult with a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies discussed. Content should not be viewed as an offer to buy or sell any of the securities mentioned or as legal or tax advice. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation. Different types of investments involve higher and lower levels of risk. There is no guarantee that a specific investment or strategy will be suitable or profitable for an investor's portfolio. There are no assurances that a portfolio will match or exceed any particular benchmark. All investment strategies can result in profit or loss.